The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds.
And welcome to Ceres Country. At the end, or maybe the start of your day, wherever you are in the world, able to tune out from the world and tune in to the matters that matter most to farming, food and fashion in paradise, Aotearoa, New Zealand. Now, we face challenges daily. We all do. And particularly in the primary sector, it is about navigating from wacky weather through to opposing opinions. Those tough days do build resilience, but successful days also build courage to continue. Every seed we plant today is a tree that we can shelter under later. I bring forth to you this concept because we are, of course, continuously having a debate about ideas. And tonight, I have to acknowledge, in half an hour or 25 minutes is the second leaders debate. I do apologise. I'm not going to apologise. I actually didn't even know the last one was on. And I don't think it's because I want to acknowledge the fact that I have no interest in politics. For those who follow Ceres Country, you know I absolutely 100% do. And I thought today about, do I make this a shortened version of Ceres Country tonight to allow people to continue to watch Ceres, the leaders debate at 7:30? And I thought, no, I owe it to our podcast listeners to bring them the latest issues and opinions and news around what's happening in our sector. And for those who want to shut off from politics, because everywhere you listen and look in our news media and our talkback radio, it is the hot topic. Of course, it's as it is today in the US with that debate between Trump and Biden. I am, as soon as we get off from Ceres Country, going to listen to that as well, the leaders' debate. So I do want to park it. However, it is an interesting thing I do want to comment on about how it just feels like a nothing election. I don't know if it's just me. I had a very emotive election 2017 going into it, and there's confidence surveys coming out left, right and centre from Rabobank, from Beef and Lamb, saying farmers have, not felt as confident as they have since 2017. No surprise. Uncertainty drives a lack of confidence. And so with that, my opening is around how do we build resilience and continue to have courage on the seeds that we have planted already, regardless of opposing opinion. I want to leave that thought with you. But I want to have a bit of fun in the comments below. Today is International Podcast Day, something that we want to celebrate here at Ceres Country. We have grown our audience incredibly in 6 months since we started this more regular podcast every night, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday from 7 p.m. live through social media, cerescountry.com, in alliance with the fantastic humans that are a part of Farmers Weekly. But our on-demand is through the roof. We have audiences emailing us from all around the world. Our viewership has quadrupled within months, and it is seriously where we harness our most amount of listeners. We do the live broadcast purely for the fact that it's that sort of appointment time that makes me sit down, put the face on, and our guests to come around and make sure that record happens. But the thing is, what I've learned about podcasts is you've got to be consistent and regular so that you build an audience around that. So tonight, what I want to do, because everybody with podcasts, is always asking each other, what is the latest? What are you listening to? Can you give me some recommendations, etc., etc.? I can point to an awesome place to go, farmersweekly.co.nz, and click on the podcast tab. What the team is starting to do is collate a lot of fantastic agri-focused podcasts all in one place so that you can get a feel for them. I would love you to suggest to me tonight in the comments live or email me, sarah@cerescountry.com, what other agri-focused podcasts do you think should be added to that page? But also, let's have a bit of fun, because I believe also when you live and breathe the agriculture industry, you live and breathe science, you actually love and crave something completely different. I actually work in, I say, two industries, the media industry and the farming, food and fibre industry. And I absolutely love following a podcast that was recommended to me by Dean Williamson, who the co-owner of Global HQ, owned Farmers Weekly. It's called Your Undivided Attention. Every single episode, I am freaked out about the algorithms of social media. If you watch Social Media Dilemma and you think about what's going on there, where our society is shifting to and has been shaped as we broadcast on social media tonight as well, is scary and freaky, and I think it's something we need to pay very close attention to. And as I alluded to, as we go into an election, I'm really looking forward to our fantastic lineup of guests tonight, bringing you some fantastic thought-provoking content. I hope so. And if you do follow along with the full show, you do get that full spectrum. But of course, on podcasts, if you don't, Serious Country, make sure to give us a subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, because you can listen to these individual interviews. And a lot of people tell me they love it. Or we 10-minute bite size here, etc., or sit down for a good old hour. Now, after 7:20, Professor Louis Schipper from Waikato University is going to join us to share his knowledge on soil carbon. And this is following his pulpit piece. This is an opinion piece in Farmers Weekly's newspaper on why soil carbon should matter to farmers and why we should pay close attention to it. I'm really interested in this field, so I'm really looking forward to asking him about our soil carbon stocks, and there's a lot of debate around that factor. Is it a place that we can sequester and meet our Paris Agreement protocols? After 7:30, Southland Federated Farmers President Geoffrey Young is going to catch up with us about a new farming event to help bring urban and rural Southland farmers together to appreciate this. There's been a lot of tension in Southland last year. Anti-winter grazing campaign unleashed this year, the low slope with freshwater rules. I'm looking forward to catching up with Geoffrey on quite a few different topics to see how Southland farmers are faring, let alone with that last snow blast in the midst of lambing. 7:40. To close the show, this is fantastic. Came into my inbox late this afternoon. A new online platform has launched. It is called Know Your Catchment, and this is to monitor freshwater data in lots of different ways. It's been actually a pilot program since 2018 from IrrigationNZ and multiple other partners. So Chief Executive Elizabeth Soal will explain more. But first up on Serious Country, do you want to get more value in usage from your wool? Well, stupid question if you are a strong wool breeder. This is a very cool catch up with Fairlie sheep farmer Eric Laurenson, and wool classer is going to join us from On the Run to talk about some innovative ideas around how you can use your own wool to start with in your own home. This is Serious Country.
Delicious. Ever wondered where it starts? Does it start with care? Respect. Fresh grass 365 days a year. The truth is, delicious doesn't start in a single moment or with a single ingredient. Delicious starts here.
This is Serious Country. Thank you so much, Anthony, for your large comment here. There's a bit of a merger of topics. This was about the leaders' debate, and also we are talking tonight around great podcast recommendations. It's International Podcast Day, so feel free wherever you are watching to the live stream, enter into the comments below across Facebook or YouTube. Wonderful Megan in the UK is sending them through to me here on the old laptop. Now, hey, we are talking about wool constantly, aren't we, on Sarah's Country? What to do with the price of strong wool? This farm fleece to home floor concept and initiative is something I'm extremely excited about the opportunity, whereby people are getting a lot more innovative about their own homegrown wool entering into their own homesteads. This is the concept of carpeting your own homestead, and also too where that can lead to in terms of storytelling as well. Sheep farmer Eric Laurenson is in this week's Farmers Weekly and joins us now on the phone. Evening, Eric. How are you, Eric?
Good, thank you, Sarah. How are you?
Good. Now, I'm hoping you heard me there. You're farming on 170 hectares in Fairley, and I know you're calling us from Inequity Farming Property in the Sticks in Central Otago. You must be extremely passionate, especially being a classer, about the quality of wool.
Yes. I've had a passion for wool all my life. It was instilled to me by my father. Brought up on a fine wool farm with a half-bred stud. So we used to show a few fleeces at the local show, and just been interested in wool most of my life.
Absolutely. It must be heartbreaking to see the demise when it comes to the differentiation of wool types and where it's going from a brand perspective over all of these decades, especially from your father's generation. What's your thoughts on what we need to do? I mean, I know it's a long time. We've only got a few minutes, but to solve that problem.
Crikey, give me an easy question. Yeah, I mean, here on this farm, the wool check used to be the biggest part of the income, and sadly that's not so anymore. So she's a bit of a tough gig at the moment, growing wool, and especially this year as well, when even our fine wool prices have been sort of cut in half. But I guess it goes, we just lost a woolen industry in New Zealand. I'm probably showing my age, but when I was a bit younger, there used to be a woolen industry in New Zealand, and it's just not there anymore. And so, it all got taken off overseas to some of the other third world countries where costs of labour were cheaper, and it's just gone. How to fix it? Crikey dicks.
There's a few...
Up to me, I'd have a lot of ads on TV at premium showtime showing synthetics versus wool. Probably not the done thing, but like, put them up in flames, or try and put them up in flames at the same time. And there are things on TV, on YouTube you can watch. And how anybody can put synthetic and plastic carpets in their houses after they watch that just defies logic.
Yeah.
It's not the fire that kills you, it's the fumes. And to see what happens in those things, it just defies logic.
Okay, so you were in a position, Eric, to replace carpet, 50-year-old carpet in the homestead. What led you to think, hang on a minute, rather than just going and buying any old wool carpet, I might investigate the initiative to use my own wool in the process of carpeting my home?
I think, we've been producing good quality wool and gets rolled out the door on a truck and it goes away, and you never really know what happens to it. I got involved with a bit of a wool initiative and got some wool into a contract that was made into jerseys, and to put those on your back, and I've still got it. She's looking a bit tattered now, but it was really something to wear your own wool. And so when I thought of carpeting the house, I thought, well, why not use my own carpet? Why roll it out the door and someone else get the use of what I've produced? So sort of born out of necessity. As I said, the house, the carpet's over 50 years old. So why not use my wool in it went from there.
And this was an alliance with New Zealand Yarn, who handled the whole process. Can you talk other sheep farmers who may think this is a fantastic idea through the process and how they can do that as well?
Yeah, we have a bit of time up your sleeve for a start off because it took a year. But I just used my 8-month second shear wool. So I only use my body wool because, again, I guess if we go back to why I think wool isn't popular anymore, was a lot of short wool was being blended into yarn, and some of the carpets that were made out of these yarns failed, and so people went off carpet. So, I mean, blending, don't get me going on blending, it's not something I'm a fan of. So I put my body wool into the carpet. We use about 9 bales, and it will do about 3 average size houses. So we scout it, then sent it to New Yarn in Christchurch, and they spun it, dyed it. And probably the saddest part for me is that the wool then had to be sent to Australia to be made into a carpet. I'd just love to be made into New Zealand, but I guess it's a partnership that New Yarn have with Prestige Carpets in Australia. And there it was made into carpet, and it's come back, and it's been cut for the house that's going to go in, yet to be laid, but that's hopefully going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
I am really interested in terms of 50-year-old carpet and how it wore.
It wore not too bad. They were in the bedroom, so it's not the real heavy traffic area of your hallway and lounge. Yeah. But you can still see the pattern in it, put it that
way. and the stories it could tell as well, Eric.
Yeah, we won't go there.
Hey, before you go, Eric, you are a classer. I grew up, my father also got off-farm income from classing as well, and so appreciate that. My cousin has also gone into classing and loves it, as well as getting around and seeing what's happening on other properties. When it comes to a range of micron, what are you seeing out there in terms of the appreciation of fleece quality and the enthusiasm for it across the micron spectrum?
It's a bit sad actually to see what's happened in the strong wool. A lot of farmers, I think, have lost interest, and you can see why. I mean, out of the rest of their lifetime, they're going to make more money out of meat and wool. So, there's been other genetics used and the crossbreeding and composites that are running around the place. And they have in no way helped the quality of the strong wool clip in New Zealand at all. So there's not the shed prep going on that there used to be. It's sad to see. They've sort of decided that there's not the money to be made, and there's not. But crikey, if you take, if you don't strive for quality, I mean, they can't complain about the price of wool if they're not doing anything about it. How many farmers can honestly say that they've tried to improve their wool quality in the last 30 years? In fact, they're all. And so I guess in some ways we only have some farmers have themselves to blame because they have created the problem themselves with what they've done with their breeding.
Yeah, there's only one man I think can argue that, Alistair Campbell. And for those in the wool industry will understand exactly what I mean. Hey, Eric, thank you so much. We are talking tonight, and I'm going to throw this to you. Feel free to pass if you don't. But with a 4-hour commute between farms in Fairlie and Central Otago, have you got into podcasts?
I'd probably be asked to say, what is a podcast, Sarah?
That's okay. I'll have to send you through a few things. But fantastic opportunity to download them while you're on your Wi-Fi at home, and then you can listen to them offline. You don't need Wi-Fi through all of those dead zones with your Vodafone or Spark.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah's Country is a really good one to start with.
Oh, well, I'll have to start listening to that one, I see.
Oh, no, you're an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Eric. And you can catch Eric's piece in this week's Farmers Weekly, which is a newsmaker piece. And it is a regular section in your Farmers Weekly, which is out at the start of the week across 80,000 new rural mailboxes. Now, coming up, we're going to be joined by Louis Schipper from Waikato University. I'm really looking forward to catching up with Louis. I have a real interest in soil carbon and I'm craving to know more information. So stick around very shortly because I really think we're going to learn quite a lot from Louis. This is Sarah's Country. I'm really excited to have on the show a gentleman who has pen to the paper in a 3-part series for this week's Farmers Weekly, kicking off in the Pulpit series. And it is a topic that I am very intrigued by, and I know many of our audience also will be. This is about the role that soil carbon can play in our challenges with climate change. But as farmers and growers, how are we able to capture and understand this more, both from an offsetting perspective, but also too from a productivity perspective and a biological perspective to benefit the wider ecosystem. Professor Louis Schipper from the University of Waikato joins us now to discuss this further. Louis, can you please start by painting a little bit of a picture for us about your background in soil carbon, I suppose?
Oh, kia ora. Thanks for having me on. I guess I've been looking at the cycling of carbon and nitrogen in soil for probably 20 or 30 years, and it's really been in the last sort of 10 to 15 years that I've really started thinking more about, well, how much carbon do we have in our soils, and how does it get there? How do we keep it? And are there ways that we might be able to increase the amounts of carbon that are in soil?
I think one of the big debates out there is that we have virgin soils in comparison to the rest of the world, and that our tank is pretty much full when it comes to the ability to store more carbon in our soils. Is that true?
I think by and large that is right. A lot of New Zealand soils, when you show overseas people, scientists from overseas, oh, this is our soil and this is how much carbon we have in it, many of them can't believe how much there is there. And so, yes, we have a lot of carbon in our soils, and that's because we're a relatively young geological country, and we've got soils that are very good at storing and holding onto carbon. And then we've had a long period before humans got here of lots of growth, forests and all that, pumping carbon into the soil so that it builds up and stores there. What we haven't done is we haven't cropped it enormously or used the land too hard so that that carbon could have been lost. So our long-term approach to sort of partial agriculture has generally maintained, or in fact it's even increased the amount of carbon in soil relative to forests. So we haven't lost that carbon that you might see in other parts of the world, like, Central North America, parts of Europe. So yes, we've built a lot of carbon in our soils because of a number of very good reasons.
So what is the untold story here, do you think, Louis, that we really need to be having these conversations around?
Well, I think it's really important that we keep what we have, for me, and that we try and find ways to increase the amount of carbon. We need to take perhaps a step back and ask ourselves, why do we care? There are two main reasons that we're interested in carbon in soil. One is to maintain the quality or the health of our soils. Organic matter or carbon in soil is kind of the centre of all the biological and chemical cycling in soil, and it also gives the soil a lot of physical properties. So it's important to keep the amount of carbon that we have in soils so that we maintain its health. The second thing that we are becoming increasingly interested in is if we can take CO2 out of the atmosphere and store it as carbon in soil, that's a reduction in the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And so globally, we are interested in trying to find ways of doing that. And that is happening in many countries where they've drawn down their carbon. In New Zealand, like I said, we have quite a lot and it's hard to build up. We're thinking about it, but we don't want to lose it.
And what we can improve is based on what we can measure. And I understand, I spoke to a lot of soil ecologists in Australia, flat out mapping in Australia and around the world. I understand it is underway here, but your work that you do with the New Zealand Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Research Centre, how far along are we so that we can actually keep a dipstick in what's going on?
A really good question. If we're trying to get at national stocks of carbon to find out how much we have, where we have in New Zealand, we've done some preliminary work that was sort of taking advantage of work that had been done decades ago and resampled some sites so that we could find out how much carbon was there. Now, that was a kind of like do the best you can kind of approach. But now a system has been designed for New Zealand where we are starting to resample or take samples throughout New Zealand in a much more robust, statistically designed approach. And then we will resample those sites over time, and that will allow us at a national scale to understand what our carbon stocks are doing in pastoral soils. We are also looking at and have developed up a method for being able to look at individual farms so that if farmers were interested, they could understand how much carbon they've got and then monitor that through time.
Do you believe that we should be rewarded for holding on to carbon as opposed to the ability to sequester?
I think that it's basically good farming practice to look after your soil carbon. So if you're farming well and caring for your land, and I understand every farmer I've ever spoken to, that's what they are thinking about, looking after the land. And I think a central part of looking after your land is keeping the amount of carbon that you have, so that you have healthy soils and high quality soils. The carbon benefit is also there if you could sequester more. If you lost it, that would be not good for the soil health, and it would not be good for the atmosphere either.
Louis, I don't like to talk politics with scientists, but I actually kind of do, because you get the real deal. When it comes to policy around protecting our soils, how much do you want this to be on the table in terms of how we as a nation absolutely value what is underneath our feet? Because as we have urbanisation sprawl and some of these valuable parts of New Zealand being disrupted and thousands of years worth of beautiful quality topsoil being destroyed, when is enough on that front?
I think looking after our environment more broadly is absolutely critical, and soils sit sort of at the centre of a lot of that. If you think about soils, that's the bit that we're managing, right, to get production. But it's also where the nutrients leave and enter up in waterways, and it's where nitrogen goes into the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas, or CO2 goes into the atmosphere as a gas. So I'm not a policy person, that's quite clear. And policy brings together not just the science that I perhaps have some understanding of, but the way that we as a country want to manage our land. And so you've got to bring in factors of economics, obviously. You've got to bring in factors of culture and social requirements and social justice. So I absolutely see that a good understanding of the way that we manage soils and the way that we look after them is critical for the soil, for the water, and for the air.
What a wonderful way to summarise. I'm not going to let you go because it's International Podcast Day, Louis, and I'm assuming heavily that you are a podcast listener. Could you share with us some of your favourites for our listeners?
Sure. I walk to work and I listen to podcasts on the way there and on the way back, and I have a couple. there's one that's called it's the Serial podcast. So it's SERIAL, which is it's a long format one, and they've done some amazing things. And if you ever want to listen to an incredible podcast about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has sadly passed, that's one to listen to. But they do a whole series on the Supreme Court. Fascinating stuff. So that's a bit sort of detail perhaps, but the other one that I quite like, which is a bit more quirky, is Stuff You Should Know. And it's two guys debating back and forth about all sorts of topics, and they've done soil, so there's something to look for. They've done wetlands, which I also work in, but they do a whole range. They did origami the other day, and so you get all these different kind of quirky. They're a little bit shorter, but great fun.
I was just thinking about that with the algorithms of social media serving us up a plate full of confirmational bias content that it thinks we should know. Things like picking up the Time magazine used to be that way to expand your brain into themes and topics that you wouldn't necessarily seek out. And that's probably why Stuff You Should Know is that sort of wonderful paradise where we can have back the days when we were served up critical thought.
Yes, with a bit of fun in between, right? Because you can get too serious on all this stuff. I mean, it is serious, but you do want lighter moments so that you have time to reflect, right? So I enjoy that balance in those different podcasts.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Louis, for appearing on this podcast known as Sarah's Country. And I look forward to following on with your 3-part series, and this is the pulpit section of this week's Farmers Weekly. Check it out today. Soil carbon influences climate, farm productivity, and more to come from Louis. Coming up after the break, we're heading to Southland to catch up with Geoffrey Young, President of Southland Federated Farmers. There is an event planned to basically thank farmers and show some unity and bring together rural and urban. But I also want to bring up a field day that is also going on to get Southland farmers thinking about what these freshwater rules mean. Geoffrey will join us very shortly on Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country.
Balance has its own team of innovation specialists. It's our job to lead the way, working with some of the most cutting-edge science and research. We've got partnerships with some of the best suppliers in the world, so our farmers get the very best products for New Zealand farms.
And in every region across the country, the conditions are very different, and farmers and growers' needs are too.
That's why we're always looking for solutions that are just right, like here at our Huntly Service Centre.
And here in Canterbury, we've got a self-service silo, so I can pick up fat when it suits me.
And here in Morrinsville, we've got a world-class mill. That means that we can safely deliver our customers with the freshest, highest quality feed and minerals.
It's about putting the customer first because that's what drives our business.
We've been focusing on faster turnaround of orders. We've got to get the right products to the right places at the right times.
Here in Taranaki, we've got New Zealand's only urea manufacturing plant. It's where we create our premium sustained fertiliser.
We're supplying nationwide and working locally. By getting to know you and what you want to achieve, we can help you get there.
And with the new My Balance platform, Balance has put my farm at my fingertips.
In fact, we offer support in all sorts of ways, sharing the best nutrition practice with farming families across the country. Whether we're talking about animal health, farm productivity,
or looking after our natural environment, sustainability underpins everything we do. We use our local expertise and the latest tools to help farmers and growers navigate the changing regulations, so you can leave your farm in great shape for the future.
And we can be really accurate, avoiding areas like wetlands and waterways with our award-winning Spread Smart tech. It makes the job far safer, more efficient, and gives you the best results.
When you've got access to that kind of know-how, you've got the support you need to make sure you're farming sustainably. It's that kind of thinking that'll keep us going for generations to come.
Together creating the best soil and feed on earth.
Well, they say that one of the reasons that Southland's economy didn't tank through COVID is due to its strong rural economy. However, there has been such disconnect for many years between rural and urban. But there is an exciting event planned, and this will be a way to unite town and country around a common theme, and it's called We All Live Off the Land. Joining us now is Southland Federated Farmers President Geoffrey Young. Evening, sir. How are you?
Yes, good evening, Sarah. Very well, thanks. Very well.
Hey, it's been a tough time over many years and a lot of battles that you've been involved with on behalf of Southland farmers and leading. Where did this type of event concept come from?
Probably, Sarah, it evolved after we made our stand against farmers applying for a resource consent for winter grazing. And there was still a lot of farmers that wanted to see us keep pushing to try and get some pragmatism and common sense around some of these new freshwater rules. So we felt we needed to do something, and the momentum was building in other quarters for a tractor trek. So we have essentially tried to incorporate part of that into this event just to let off some steam from some of those people that were advocating that type of thing. And we really wanted to bring the city people on board, so we approached the Chamber of Commerce and they were more than happy. So yes, we're very keen to get urban people involved in this freshwater regulations and just see what the outcomes will be for both farmers and themselves, but particularly around the farming people.
How do you achieve that fine balance between a protest and as you've described, a show of unity?
Well, it's a very fine balance, there's no doubt, and some people have been nervous, I think, about tractors coming into town. But look, we're relying on common sense for farmers. They can come in there with the tractors, park them up, and we are going to have more of a carnival atmosphere there. There will be a formal part on the Friday at lunchtime between 12 and 1. So, yes, look, placards and banners and things won't be appropriate at all. So we don't want to see them. It's going to be a family day, and we want to bring farmers and urban people together to have a bit of social time later and chew the fat and just get to know one another and socialise.
Can you please give our audience a bit of an understanding of the sentiment in Southland and let's say the last 3 years? They have been pretty big years.
Yeah, well, that's true, Sarah. Look, product prices by and large have been very, very good for farmers the last 3 years. A couple of years ago, when the Environment South and the Regional Council started working on this new water and land plan of theirs, it started to raise a few flags, and there was a lot of it that we could certainly work with. We, Fed farmers, have appealed some of it, but that, of course, will now be superseded by these new regulations from the government. So, yes, it's really been quite a tough time for farming. Mentally, it's not that product prices aren't good, as I say. Interest rates are very low. Everything's really running in our favour, but we're just getting all of these issues coming from mainly central government, regarding fresh water, the environment. We've got climate change, and then biodiversity is coming up next year. So there's a lot of regulation and change that's really playing on farmers' minds. And we are concerned that farmers are really feeling the weight of that.
From a leadership perspective and Federated Farmers' role in this, and your particular role as the president of Southland Federated Farmers, Geoffrey, how much do you bring to the table about our consumers' concerns and our trade negotiators' concerns in terms of us ensuring that our nose is clean from an environmental and an animal welfare perspective?
Look, by and large, I believe that farmers in New Zealand, from an environmental and animal welfare perspective, are some of the very best in the world. It's just unfortunate we've got a handful of activists, and they're mostly vegans that have ulterior motives of trying to remove animals from the farming system, in fact. But that causes me more concern to see those really bad images, and it appalls virtually all farmers, I think, because we don't want to see stock wintered, especially like that. So Look, I think, as I say, the activists are probably doing more harm than anything. And essentially, we have a very, very good farming system in New Zealand with free-range animals. So, I don't have any problem with that. It's just the perception, largely, that the problem is about.
Geoffrey, can I ask you a challenging question? Of the freshwater rules, what is something that does need a change that you do agree with?
That I do agree with?
Yes.
Look, I think all farmers, they certainly want to see improvements in water, but that's one of my gripes is the fact that in Southland in particular, people swim in most of the rivers and lakes that we have down here, and by and large, it's very, very good water to be able to recreate in. So the perception is from some Wellington bureaucrats that we've spoken to that you can't swim in some of these rivers, and they're amazed that we do, in fact, and I don't know of anyone that's become ill by swimming in there. So, look, we've got to look at the positives as well, but certainly we want guidance and some regulations around freshwater quality and environmental standards. So I don't have a problem with that, but some of these rules just go too far, and they're a broad brush approach over the whole country. We need a regionalised solution to all of these things, I think.
Yes, Geoffrey, we heard from Damien O'Connor on Monday on Sarah's Country, and I asked him the question, is this just creating a licence to operate? And his answer was yes. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Geoffrey Young is the president for Federated Farmers. And Geoffrey, can I suggest you stick around and listen to this next interview? This is with Chief Executive from Irrigation New Zealand, Liz Soal, and she has announcing this new platform. It's called Know Your Catchment. She really wants this to catch on, excuse the pun, in catchments around New Zealand, which is an online monitoring platform where you can log in and see the quality of the fresh water and its effect on the catchment in the community. It's going to be incredible if we can roll this out, and if we can continue to build this as a visual database, dashboard, that the likes of you and me, anybody in New Zealand can log in and see trends and improvement, and of course swimmability and the acknowledgement, because we as New Zealanders have become increasingly invested in our water quality. And do not have to suggest that farmers and growers are already very, very attached to the outcome of where we're going with our catchment. So as I said, after the break, we will be catching up with Liz Soal on this new concept called Know Your Catchment. This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Well, Irrigation New Zealand believes it is important that Kiwis get up-to-date information about freshwater in their local catchments and have a new way to do it. I'm very excited when I saw this news come across my inbox today. This is called Know Your Catchment. It's an online platform which showcases water monitoring data and different ways freshwater can support well-being. Irrigation New Zealand Chief Executive Elizabeth Soal joins us now to talk about this new and innovative platform. Hey Liz, let's see, what was the background? I see 2018, an SFF fund, a Sustainable Food and Fibres Future Fund behind this, but there has been a collective approach to get to this. Can you give us a bit of a background to this journey to today?
Sure. So like you said, the project was originally conceived as a concept back in 2018 because it was realised by the irrigation sector that our irrigation schemes were doing an awful lot of water quality, in particular monitoring, as well as the regional councils that have been doing all of their state of the environment monitoring for quite a long time. And it was felt that we were gathering an awful lot of data, but how was that getting turned into useful information? And so the concept was that we would find a way to use some of that water quality data that was being undertaken, the monitoring that was being undertaken by the irrigation schemes, and also linking it potentially with some of the stories around what farmers were doing on the ground to address water quality issues. And so the application was put into the Sustainable Farming Fund as it was then, which was accepted by MPI. We brought in partners, like you said, and originally it was to be piloted in 2 catchments. We reduced that down to 1 last year to make sure that we did a really good job of doing it well. So it's been piloted in the Waikato catchment. So it's been a partnership between the Otago Regional Council, the Environment Canterbury, who are the 2 regional authorities that span that catchment, as well as the 6 irrigation schemes on the ground in the lower Waikato catchment. So it has been a partnership approach to it, and we're really excited to be able to launch it now.
All right, I'm on the website here and you can click on check your data. How do you believe that this will be utilised, and where do you see this going in terms of adding on that usability?
Sure. So there's sort of 2 main audiences for it at the moment. So there's one which is just the community at large. So that's telling the catchment story to general people out there in the general public, to give them up-to-date information that's really fine-grained so that they can find out about water quality information in their catchment. The other audience is the farmers and the irrigation schemes themselves, so they can see what's happening with water quality in a really up-to-date manner, and then they can potentially take that information and use it to develop practice change or look at how they might target specific areas. So, for instance, if there was a part of a catchment that was showing that there were elevated phosphorus levels in that area, then they could tailor their farm plans, their farm environment plans that they've already got in place to address some of those issues more specifically than might otherwise be happening.
Is this specifically for those who actually understand the numbers? There is a lot of numbers and graphs, and from a usability perspective as a general public, I wouldn't really fully understand if things were improving, if they were good. But for those who live and breathe it and are doing farm environment plans around it, it's really helpful. How can we develop this to be a wider storyteller?
Yeah, and that's one of the tricky things about conveying scientific information and data in a way that's easily understood by people who don't use these sort of tools every day. So we've tried to use a simplified key that shows whether water quality is improving or declining or staying the same. We've also got a scale there that shows how sites, whether that's groundwater or surface water, compare to other sites within the catchment. And back on the landing page, we've also got an instructional video about how the site can be used. We've got a glossary that explains a lot of what the terminology is, we hope in an easy to understand way. And then within the portal itself, we've also got information about what's happening within sites in the catchment. So it's telling the narrative story behind the numbers in a way that we hope will be engaging and people can understand, as well as providing information on sites of interest, for instance, Lake Wainono, which is a really significant regionally and nationally wetland that supports a lot of ecological value. And so we've got those sort of information in there as well, in the hope that we can tell the entire story rather than just providing the scientific data, which tends to be what happens in these sorts of information exercises in the past.
I love the headline here, water more than just meets the eye, a get out there and do it approach to water monitoring. I can definitely see a lot of people that listen and watch Sarah's Country interested in expanding this concept beyond the Otago, South Canterbury, Waitaki areas, and of course to a smaller farm level, because these particular catchments are very precise in these data monitoring. What is involved to expand it, in the technology to put in place in your own catchment, and who do they get in touch with?
Sure. So I'll start from the last question. If there is interest in expanding this beyond the Waitaki, which we're really hopeful will occur, because that's the idea behind it, is that it's a pilot and that it is going to be expanded into other areas. The first port of call is to get in touch with Irrigation New Zealand, and you can contact us via our website or the information that's there on the portal itself. It can be as big or small as whomever is getting interested in this wants it to be. We have worked with Iris Data Science out of Dunedin to build the platform that puts the data on the website, essentially. The data is drawn in from the servers, databases that are used by Environment Canterbury and Otago Regional Council and NIWA, because some of the data that we use comes from there as well. So really we've worked hard to develop a platform, a framework behind it, that other data can then be put into more easily to then you put it into other catchments as well. And it can be as large or as small as the users want it to be. It does look a bit like Lawa, which is the Land and Water Aotearoa site that's already in place, which is used by all the regional councils across the country to input data. However, ours is more fine-grained than that. It's really catchment specific down to the sites that are used. And also it's more up-to-date because we don't have as large a data pool to use. We don't have to go through the long process of data checking that all the regional councils have to do when they pull their data. So the Lawa site gets updated once every year or 18 months, but ours is getting updated. It's sort of 2 weekly, so it's much more frequent updates than that has now.
Fantastic, well done. And of course, open source, I would imagine, to the fact that can plug into farm environment plans and be measurable ongoing. It's all about just starting that core foundation of data to then build on that ecosystem. That's awesome. Congratulations. Catchment.waitakiirrigators.co.nz is the domain that I have in front of me. I suggest you either check that out or get in touch with Irrigation New Zealand. Elizabeth, tonight throughout the show, we have been discussing, because it's International Podcast Day, and I know you do a lot of travelling, and what a wonderful way to take that information, or absorb information on the road. What are some of your top recommendations for our audience, what you're listening to?
Well, I tend to listen to true crime podcasts. I'm a bit of a fan of all true crime podcasts, but some of my favourites would be, one of the first I ever listened to was called Death in Ice Valley, which is a BBC podcast about a unsolved murder in Norway, which is just fascinating. And for me, that's sort of one of my benchmarks. I also like listening to podcasts around politics. So Fault Lines is one that's just launched about the fallout from the Iraq War, what led to the Iraq War between Bush and Blair. And there's other ones that I've listened to around the Clinton-Lewinsky affair, and the name of it just escapes me at the moment, sorry. But yeah, I love all politics podcasts and true crime. So I would highly recommend Death in Ice Valley as one of the best.
Good way to shut off in terms of science that you're living and breathing every single day, and a bit of juicy gossip, especially Lewinsky, Clinton. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's Chief Executive from Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soal. What an interesting lineup of guests that we have had on tonight. And of course, we're talking about International Podcast Day. Thank you so much for all of your wonderful comments wherever you have been watching and participating live. I'll get to a few of those now. Alexa Phillips has said, we shouldn't have to send our wool out of this country to be made into a product. I 100% agree with you, Alexa. There is a lot of fundamentals around that. And one of the big things for us here in New Zealand is our labour is expensive. But bring back manufacturing to New Zealand. I talked to somebody today whereby the tannery market in New Zealand has come to nearly an absolute halt in terms of adding value to our lamb's wool products. And it's a crying shame from where we've been and come from in the last generation. So much work needs to be done, and people say it's not the government's role to intervene in the secondary market, which is manufacturing. However, they can be doing a lot in terms of tariff and trade and imported products. Rick Cameron I'd love to hear what your thoughts were on Louis Schipper's, the soil carbon professor from Waikato University's interview earlier. He suggested that Working Cows is a cracker podcast if you want to learn what differing grazing principles are in terms of profiting from harsher locations. Thank you so much to all of the wonderful recommendations that we've had throughout the show, to our awesome guests. And of course, happy International Podcast Day. If you didn't catch the start, it's International Podcast Day and we're celebrating on farmersweekly.co.nz. Click on the tab podcasts is a great way to get started into podcasts. And for those who are technically challenged or want to be able to understand it, the big misconception is that you can't listen to them when you have no reception or you have no internet. Yes, you can. I'm going on a flight tomorrow and I've got them downloaded whilst I'm on the Wi-Fi, and then I can listen to them on the plane. An absolutely excellent way to keep up to date on all sorts of topics, but at the same time sometimes get into something a bit juicy and different from what you're doing in day to day. As we heard there from Liz, she loves a bit of juicy crime investigation, and Monica Lewinsky's saga. I found that absolutely amazing. Thank you for taking the time to join us for the last hour on Sarah's Country, produced in alliance with the fantastic team at Farmers Weekly. And of course, please get in touch. I do love and read all of your emails and your messages on social media. Sarah@sarahscountry.com. Super easy to remember. And let's continue to keep this conversation growing and going on how we farm food and fashion into the future here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I will be back next week from Monday at 7 p.m, but always on demand wherever you love to consume your podcasts. It's been an absolute pleasure. And in the meantime, take care of yourself, your family, your community. Good night and go well.